So let's just sink into the moment. Just feel the air moving out and into your lungs. And just take in the room that you're in. Step out of the stories of your day and just be where you are. And let this be enough. Tonight I want to give you a teaching at the beginning of the class. Usually we meditate first. But tonight in your meditation, I want you to be aware of this and focusing on this. So we're going to talk about it up front. It's a simple teaching. It's a teaching on personal power. Personal power is your ability to effect change in your world, your ability to effect change in yourself, your ability to sustain choice. Power is the steam that accomplishes literally anything in your life. Anytime you place your attention on something, you direct power towards it. You direct energy towards it. And so as soon as you look at something, whatever it is that has your attention is becoming more and more of itself. So if you're somebody that spends your life staring at negative things are growing in your life. If you stare at positive things are growing in your life. You know, if you spend a lot of time focusing on accomplishing something, you'll find those things tend to get accomplished. But more than just making sure that you focus on the things that you want in your life, there's kind of a mechanism to become aware of. And that is that you need to be single-pointed in your focus. Usually when we say single-pointed, we think of it kind of in yogic terms, where we're talking about this just intense, like little beam of focus on one thing, and we're holding it really rigidly, and there's all this willpower involved. You know, and there's a place for that. You know, there are things that can be discovered from a practice like that. But what I'm talking is something a little more livable than that. What I'm talking about is just an understanding that if your consciousness is split in two or more directions, then your power is split and it's going to be less effective. You know, most people, as you know, when they sit down to meditate, they kind of have a bunch of programs still running in their head. You know, they've got the person that pissed them off at work. They've got the stuff that they need to do later on in the night. They've got stresses that are the reason that they're attending the class in the first place. They've got all sorts of baggage that those are the things that aren't running on automatic pilot. You've also got all this baggage that runs on automatic pilot just from your past. Just things that make up this kind of cyclical description of life in your head that just kind of goes nonstop. You know, I record these on a Mac. And for a Mac, if you have too many things running at once, and your Mac is old and you've been filling it up, and we're all pretty old and we all have many things running at once. What happens is the Mac starts slowing down. When you want to actually accomplish something, there are more hiccups. There are more things that just get in the way because the Mac is trying to do too many things at once. Its power is being directed to too many different places at once. You're kind of like my Mac. Your power is being directed to too many places at once. And so you start to feel kind of powerless. And yet, the result of that is you have the power to create a tremendous amount of chaos in your life. Because all of those things that are getting a little bit of your attention are still getting nurtured by you. So you've got this kind of garden of life growing in front of you, watered by your attention. And it's very familiar. It looks, feels, smells, tastes just like you. But it's just kind of the mess you've gotten used to. So in meditation, when we say to focus on the breath, usually something I say, I think I've probably said it 6 million times since I started teaching decades ago. I say breathe in, breathe out, and nothing else. And that's what that means. It means you're going to nurture nothing but the breath. You are going to literally let all of those other programs shut down. If you can shut them down, great. But I have found that willpower doesn't work for that very long. You're better off just not feeding them with your attention. And just like things in a garden that don't get watered, they will die down. And you will be left with the object of your attention. And it's a good thing that the object of your attention is something benign, like the breath, because that breath will receive 100% of your personal power. So what does that look like? It looks like purified energy. Whereas all of your energy, all of your power has been tinted with whatever stream of consciousness garbage you have going through your head, all of your fears and desires that are directing your attention all day long. When you shift to something like the breath, where really it's, the thing that's amazing about it is just the power of choice that's being exercised to continue to monitor the breath. When you bring all that power to something so neutral, it has a really healing effect on the body and the mind. Everything starts to brighten, everything starts to open up, everything starts to become more comfortable. And then when you stop doing it, because you have more power at your disposal, you'll start to notice how as your mind shifts to other things, those things become more empowered. They even become manifest in your world sometimes. Not always in a good way, but because you're going from something that is one-pointed to maybe first something that's two-pointed and then three-pointed and then a million-pointed. Those early stages where you're kind of coming out of your meditation but stepping back into life, you have a lot of power and you can actually see the impact you're having on life. If your energy is frenetic, you'll actually notice chaos come to your environment. If you are dealing with some ailment, you'll notice that the ailment might just clear up. Or you might notice that someone comes in and just reacts very strongly against something you didn't even think you were doing, but you weren't holding your power clean. You weren't holding your power pure. So that's what I'd like us to focus on tonight. The truth is, we focus on this every week, but I'd like you to be aware of it tonight. Tonight we're going to spend a long time just watching the breath. Tonight's going to be a night of deep meditation. And I want you to understand what we're doing is we're letting go of all those other programs that are running in our head, and we are only watering the watching of the breath with our attention. So whenever the mind comes in to take you away from anything else, when it comes in to try and get you to start planning your dinner or whatever the mind comes in to have you do, you're not going to push it away. You're not going to play with it. You are just going to return to the breath. It'll be uncomfortable sometimes because those flowers are crying out for water. But a lot of them are more weed than flower, and a lot of them are things that you can build again very easily. So go ahead and let them die out. It's all just kind of a dream anyways. And just give your attention to watching the breath. If it's boring, go ahead and be bored. If it's painful, go ahead and be in pain. Don't let any of the little tricks of the mind take you away from your chosen point of focus. Do your best to just give yourself to it so that you don't have to cling to it. You can just, through choice, abide there. Abide with the breath. Abide with your chosen point of focus. And again, the purpose of that is to take all the power that you're using to run all of these other thoughts, attitudes, plans, opinions that you have going on in your head right now, and channel all of that to one thing. To, for once, actually have a little control over how you use your power. Are there any questions about that before we go in? You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can put them in the chat. Okay. So for anybody new, what meditation looks like in this class is we meditate with our eyes open. We just let them kind of fall to a spot on the floor or in front of us or on the desk in front of us just to get them out of the way. We keep our attention high in our body at the forehead and crown. And from that place, we begin to breathe. As you breathe in, you are right there with that inhale, feeling what it's doing to your body, feeling it stretching your skin, feeling every inch of it. And then when you exhale, you're riding that exhale all the way down, right there with that exhale. And you're so given to the breath that you even start to notice this little gap of nothing space that exists between the inhale and the exhale. So let's start. Get your eyes to somewhere on the floor. Just anchor them there. Attention high in the body. And make a deep choice now that you are going to abide with the breath. You are going to become the watcher of the breath. nothing to understand, nothing to achieve. Breathe in, breathe out, and nothing else. Nothing to do but watch the breath. Return to the breath. Keep going, and I just want to talk to you a little bit. Because we deposit so much of ourselves in all these different stories, it's as if little pieces of us are just scattered across our entire personal universe. You sit in a moment, but there's something just fractured about you. Something that just doesn't feel quite whole, the way maybe it did when you were a kid. A clarity and wholeness that you didn't think you could lose, but then somewhere along the way, there was just a crack in the vessel. When you practice meditation, it's almost like you need to plant a stick into the ground of this moment. Something that just says to that vast world of little pieces of you to begin the process of returning to the center. To just gently call yourself back home. This isn't something that needs to happen through strong willpower. It's just a planting yourself in the moment. A willingness to be a beacon that gently draws yourself back to your center. Right now, using your imagination and your feeling, find that center pole in you and stake it into the ground. That the wandering parts of you may start to return back to your center, that you may slowly become whole again. Do this now, once and firmly. And with that intact, return to the breath. For anyone who just came on, we're watching our breath. But from deep within our center, we're taking a pole and staking it into the ground as a beacon to the many parts of ourselves that are just scattered throughout our inner universe, playing out all of our fears and desires, stuck in all of our memories and all of our future plans. From deep within ourselves, we are staking down our center as a beacon, inviting those parts of ourself to return to the center. All of those areas using up our energy. That it can all just come back, return, return, return to the center, that we may no longer be fractured, that we can become whole. And with that act done, we return to the breath and let it do its job. Okay, let's come out. I don't know how things are done now, but when I was a kid, kids were let out into their neighborhood to play, usually after dinner. And they would play games and they'd get involved in all sorts of things. But at some point at the end of every night, the kids would be called home. And whatever you were doing, whatever you were pretending to be, whatever story you had gotten yourself tangled up in, whether it was kick the can or hide and go seek, ghost in the graveyard, there was a time for all of that to get put down so that you could return back to the center. That's where all the warmth is. That's where the hearth fire is. That's where whatever's going on, you're safe. Ideally. Even those of you that weren't safe, you have a center where you're safe. There is a place inside of you that has never once been marred. It's untouchable, unstainable, and it's vibrant. And you borrow from its energy to live out these stories. But then you get stuck in them. You move on, but somehow a part of you is still out there playing Ghost in the Graveyard with it. It's the past. It doesn't need to be upheld. And the future hasn't happened yet, so that doesn't need to be upheld or anyways, either. Call it all home. Bring it all back to right now. Now, how did we do that? We used something called intent. Intent from a spiritual perspective, it's not just as simple as, oh, I'm going to be in a good mood today. It's not just a decision that you make. There's room for that, but that's not what I really mean with intent. Intent is more from a deep level of you, creating a symbolic gesture that your subconscious understands. Staking a pole into the imaginary ground. And knowing that the purpose that you're doing that for is to bring those parts of yourself back, to create a gentle draw upon those lost parts of yourself so that they can start finding their way home. And you can feel it when you're meditating a little bit, can you not? It's like the energy is starting to flow towards you, whereas before it was dissipated. Maybe you can't feel it. But if you did it with intent, it happened. And the idea is to do it and then go back to what you were doing. You don't need to keep redoing it. You don't need to keep reassuring that it's there. You have to have some faith. You did it. You set something in motion, now let it do its thing. Because anything you do to go in and correct it provides conflicting information to the subconscious. It tells it, oh, this isn't really going to work. So I need to try and manipulate it further. This week, when you find some part of yourself that is still stuck in a story, spinning around with that story that is no longer relevant to your present, plant that stake in the earth once, plant that pole into the earth once, with the intention of inviting that part of you back to the center. With love. Be the loving home you always wanted. Make a safe space for our traumatized youth to return to. It's all just stories anyways. It's just a bunch of kids playing kick the can. Time for them to come home. Are there any questions about that or comments? The more you can do that, the more energy you'll have at your disposal. The better you'll feel. And the warmer your life will become. Okay. If there are no questions, I kind of feel like the session has reached the end of its cycle. And so I think we could close out a little early if you like. You're welcome. All right, everybody. Have a great night, and I will see you next week. Bye. Night. Thank you.